It's 10 o'clock. We'll begin with the adoption of the agenda.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion, but there's a few changes I'd like to look at in it. Just real quick, looking through the previous meeting, it shows that I voted yes, and I wasn't in attendance on for action, so we could change that. And then also, which probably isn't a big deal, but just for clarification, does Mr. Christensen still work for Kern County? He does not, right?
No, not in about a
Okay,
year.
and I noticed Stetson's bills are coming to the attention of Alan Christensen, so maybe it'd be nice to change them to April or something instead of Alan. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
if we could look at that when I was reading through.
So when you adopt the consent agenda, just make note of the edit to the minutes, and then I'll get it changed.
Okay, perfect.
It's just a copy and paste error.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second that motion.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo. Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 3, public comment on closed session. Do we have any public comment on closed session? We have no one in attendance on the floor, and any comments on the phone? Okay, seeing none, we will now move into closed session. Convene this meeting to open session. It is 11:17. We'll begin with report out on closed session. This will be with Keith and you.
Sure. Good morning, folks. The board met in closed session to discuss the items identified on the agenda. The board received a report from Agency Counsel Hall regarding the first item, and a report from both Hall and myself regarding the others. No reportable action took place. Mr. Chair, that concludes the report.
Thank you, sir. Everyone will now follow me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we will have a roll call.
Chairman Hayman,
Present.
Vice Chair Peters,
Present.
Director Itmeyer,
Present.
Director Griffin,
Present.
and Director Vallejo.
Okay, moving on to item number 6, public comment. This time is reserved for the public to address the board about matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comments from the floor?
Judy Decker. My first comment is really directed to Mr. Vallejo, Mr. Peters, and Mr. Itmeyer, because I do not live here. I don't know if you are aware of a petition that was circulated a few days after the last board meeting that wanted to deny a group of water pumpers their ability to be a class in the upcoming adjudication. And I find this offensive and, in fact, akin to denying citizens the rights because of their color. This was sponsored by the Ridgecrest area realtors and one retired DOD employee. We have been sick, so excuse me. The other thing I have is I noted another news item that a study has been created by the Water District claiming there's almost double the recharge capacity that has been written in the GSP. And I wondered if the technical part of the GA, if Stetson engineers had received this study, because apparently it's not available to read or to have a public meeting regarding these issues on this new study. So I'd like to know if Stetson has received this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Can I, okay, answer, Mr. Chair?
Steve?
Yes, I can answer. Thank you, Judy. The answer is no, we have not received anything related to these new claims. Nothing. No background, no information, no nothing.
Thank you, Steve.
Could I comment back also to Judy? Yes, Judy, it was not a created study. It was a study that was done. So you are correct. The data has not been available due to litigation. The numbers were put out, but we have not released the full report. It will be released at some point, and it will be open to the public. And I hope that the Groundwater Authority will look at it, and maybe we can reevaluate and look at some things, because this will be the newest science available to this basin.
Thank you, Director Griffin. I have a question for you in regards to that. Could you clarify who created the study?
Yes, it was done by a technical working group of all the 6 additional pumpers in the basin.
And those 6 pumpers consist of who?
Pretty much everybody that pumps water. It's the Water District, Searles Valley Minerals, Mojave Pistachios, the Meadowbrook Farms, Rambo was involved, who was a state-approved agency through DWR.
And so each of those pumpers appointed a
hydrologist or a
active
company, correct.
participant in that study?
Correct,
And so, thank you.
correct. So it was actually a new study, not a composition of old data. It would be a new study that will be new to this basin.
Composed of the various pumpers that you just
Correct.
labeled. Thank you.
Correct. So it should be a good thing, and it should be beneficial for this valley if we can get it, it validates and it works out. That it should be very good news for this valley.
Chairman, can I ask or make a comment as well? As the Water District is a member of the GA board, it's kind of concerning to me that this was submitted basically to the newspapers first before it was submitted to the GA, as this has, if the science and the data is accurate, it would have big ramifications for groundwater, and we're in the middle of our 5-year review process right now. So I would think it would behoove the Water District to provide that information to the GA versus withholding it for litigation purposes.
I fully agree that we need to use it in the 5-year review of this plan. I mean, it's coming up, and we hope to be able to do that and meet with the Groundwater Authority and come together as one and work out a solution.
So if that data, if the data from that study is requested, would you release that to the requesting party?
I do not, I could not speak for that right now.
Okay, well, that just is, again, concerning to me, considering the Water District is a member of the Groundwater Authority, and they're creating data and withholding it from the Groundwater Authority that they're a member of.
Well, I don't think that we're looking at it that way as a water district. What we're looking at is we have a duty to the constituents of this valley to do what's best for them. And if we can do it, if there is more water available and we have more water in storage, and that is provable through science, then that provides a cheaper avenue for our customers. And that's our first duty, is to make sure that our customers of this district are protected and given the best affordable water at the cheapest rate we can.
Agreed, and I believe that as the Water District is a member of the Groundwater Authority, that would be the avenue to accomplish that.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. This is a very useful and important discussion, but I need to point out, unfortunately, that we are in public comment time right now, and we really are supposed to just respond briefly to comments of the public. rather than engaging in a separate discussion. We do have board member comments coming up.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yeah, I'm George Kroll, General Manager of the Water District. I would just add that it's important for everyone to understand that the study that we're talking about
I believe
was.
we were just informed to cease discussion on this topic, George, so we will, if it comes up later and it's in a moment that we can discuss it without going against council's advice here, we'll be happy to do that, but.
Okay.
George is actually up as a member of the public.
Yeah.
Can we, then so would it would fit the,
Representative of the Water District?
Yeah, why don't we hold this then? I guess arguably you could make a comment as a member of the public rather than as your role as staff.
Okay, as a member of the public, I would just say that it appears that this study was conducted by a number of people, and I don't believe any one member of the group that performed the study would have the authority to release it in full without coordinating with the others, and I don't believe that has happened.
thank you. Okay, any public comment from the phones? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to item number 7, board member comments.
Chairman Hayman, just before we move into comments, a reminder, I'm receiving emails and texts that people on the web cannot hear you guys. So remember to speak into the microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any board member comments?
I would welcome any new data that's been developed that we can rely upon that would show that there's more water or more than half the water of the overdraft that we currently understand is occurring. So having that data to work with for our 5-year annual review would be, I think, a wonderful thing for us to be able to receive and consider and actually digest from a technical perspective. I know that people in my family who work on the base don't come to conclusions without data. They want to see the data, they want to analyze the data, and they will base their decisions and conclusions and any answers they give to their superiors or the people they answer to based on data. And as an attorney, I can come up with arguments that don't have data behind them, but that's not the way I operate on this board. I want to see data before I reach any conclusions. I want to have that data to rely upon, to point to specifically, and to compare to, science that's already out there to see if it's the best available data or if it's just another study that doesn't have as much weight as some other studies might.
Thank you, Director Vallejo, and I would concur that I too agree with your comments wholeheartedly and would like to see that data.
I would just like to comment that I appreciate both of your comments, and the Water District does look forward to sharing that data and working with Stetson engineers and getting that shared at a point where we can look at that data and use it. So thank you for that.
Okay, hearing no further board member comments, we'll move on to item number 8, the consent agenda. This will consist of items 8A, approved minutes of the board meeting November 8th, 2023, items 8B, 2024 IWVGA regular meeting dates, and item 8C, approve the expenditures of items C, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Does any member of the public wish to remove an item? Does any member of the board wish to remove an item?
I'd like to speak real quick. I guess I made this comment a little early and before closed session, but there are a few items that we need to have changed. It shows in the packet that I voted last month on a few items and I was not in attendance, so that needs to be changed. And then also, if you look at the invoices from Stetson Engineering, it's small and minor, but they're addressed to Alan Christensen, and I thought maybe they should be changed since he's not an employee of the county anymore to be addressed to April.
So I'll make a motion for items B and C, except for item 1, which I believe is the Stetson Engineering invoice that you're referring to. And we can pull those and make changes if needed. But I'll make a motion we approve the balance of the consent.
I don't know we need to make changes to the invoice. That's from Stetson's side. That's who they were directing the invoice to. The invoice is still valid, so I wouldn't recommend pulling that. You're welcome, Steve. As far as the first one goes, it's possible to approve the minutes just with the changes suggested.
Okay, that's fine.
and do it as one motion with the suggested changes to the voting, recognizing that Director Griffin was not present and making those votes.
That's perfect.
As long as the record's clear, I've never pulled or made changes to a consent item without pulling it. I'm okay with making that motion if this board's okay with it, so I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 9, Resolution 08-23 regarding the 2024 board rotation. This will be with Keith Lemieux.
Sure. So this may seem like deja vu all over again, but this is a continuing item because of the way we set up the GA. So the way the GA officer position works, in the agreement, it was to rotate each year between the city, the county, and the water district. About the time that the adjudication was filed, the water district correctly began to assert that there was a conflict of interest between the water district and the GA on the topic of the adjudication. And so at that point in time, the general counsel for the water district declined to participate in the rotation and sort of tapped out saying, I've got a conflict. And that's why you keep seeing me here every year and not anyone else. When the topic of the officer position came up, it was decided in years past that the chair, the board president, has certain obligations such as working on the agenda and other things that kind of makes it difficult if the board chair is going to not participate in some of the topics that are in front of the district, in front of the authority, because of the conflict. So a couple years ago, as you'll recall, a majority of the board made the decision to not rotate in the water district representative as the chair. So time has now moved on. By our reckoning, this would be the year that the water district would rotate in as vice chair. And so, and of course, the vice chair has to act as the chair in the absence of the chair. So it's essentially the same issue with the vice chair. And so the recommendation, I guess, from staff, consistent with prior board decision, is to not have the rotation again this year.
Question, is this intended to be just for this next year again?
Yeah, this has always been, as I understand it, intended as a temporary measure responding to the current situation with the litigation.
Understood.
And I just want to add that I think everybody understands and hopes that once the litigation is resolved, we can get back to sort of more normal relations, and this is not intended to be a permanent change.
If I may.
Go ahead, Director Vallejo. Could I ask you to please, you have to get up close to these mics. They're kind of sensitive.
Trying to chew on it. I think I know we've had this conversation before. I'm not interested personally in having this conversation every year when the conflict does continue to exist. I would recommend that we change Section 6, which makes it effective just for this year, and instead change that to be unless and until this board formally determines that the conflict does no longer exist. And once that determination is made, then the water district would be put back into the rotation pursuant to the regular schedule that would otherwise then apply. I don't think it's beneficial for this board to continue to have to address this issue when the facts on the ground haven't been changing in terms of the conflict existing. So that would be my recommendation. I'll support this resolution as it is, but I would recommend, and I'll make a motion when it's time if the board is interested in making that change to this resolution so that we don't have to have this conversation again next year if the conflict issues still exist at that time.
And just bring that back as another agenda item on a future meeting? Or
Yeah, we'd have to bring back an agenda item for this board to formally determine that the conflict doesn't exist. It essentially would be a new resolution to say the conflict doesn't exist, or some other appropriate action by the board. I don't think it needs to be a resolution per se, but something where this board acknowledges the conflict no longer exists and we can move forward as originally intended with the rotation.
I would like to make a comment. While this ties in with the litigation, just as the previous item we were discussing during public comment, this is what is bad for this board is the litigation. Because I do feel that the water district should be the vice chair. We should be part of this board, but we cannot fully participate in this board due to the litigation. So it's the same answer that I'm being given for the water district that I have to give for sharing data. And so it's really a terrible plan, you know, so we need to somehow come together because I do feel that the water district should be a full participant and be able to vice chair or chair a meeting. And I think we're being singled out because our opinion is different, or we should be able to have differences of opinion and still be able to work together as a board. And that's just my thought.
I think absolutely agree. Political differences, policy differences are what boards are created to work through together. But we're talking about a legal conflict of interest that affects the ability of this board to operate efficiently when it comes to discussions in closed session and agenda item creation, et cetera. So I agree with you in terms of we should be able to work through political and policy differences, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about a legal conflict of interest. My understanding is created by a lawsuit filed by your district. So.
Yeah, and I would just like to echo Director Vallejo's comments, and I'm not sure, I missed whether or not you made a motion, but if you did, I'll second it. If not, I'm willing to make the motion.
I'll need to ask for public comment
haven't
prior to the vote, but we will.
Hey, before we vote, this is Tim McNair from San Bernardino County. I just got a quick question. This conflict, did it exist? I'm trying to remember. Had the lawsuit already been filed during the first year I served on the board in 2021 when Stan served as vice chair?
I don't recall, Tim, but the answer to that might be a little complicated because the lawsuit certainly existed in the sense that Mojave Pistachio had filed a limited adjudication by then. I think what sort of metastasized this into the actual conflict was the water district's decision to make this into a general adjudication, which was directed, as we know from the recent press release, towards urging the court to find a safe yield number that's different than what's in the GSP. And so when we hit that point, that's when we were in a genuine conflict of interest, clearly. And I don't recall how that timeline works against your appointment.
Yes, I remember when the water district held the vice chair during that first year, and it seemed we were able to more or less function. I hate kind of going, if the original ground rules that were set up with the GA were that we're going to rotate the chair and vice chair. I just worry that it's going to make it harder one day for us to finally kind of come together when all this lawsuit is resolved. Every little action like this, it feels like it's building up a lot of bad feelings on both sides. And at the end of the day, the water district and GA are going to have to live together because neither of them's going away. And I just worry a little that rather than trying to find a way to accommodate the normal rotation, similarly to what happened during 2021, I worry that it'll be much harder later. If we don't start trying to find a way to come together now.
Just wanted to make a quick clarification. I believe, if I remember correctly, in 2021, I was the chairman and Chairman Heyman was the vice chair.
Possibly. What I want to point out is that this issue of the conflict has sort of changed and grown. It's only sort of gotten more intense and direct. And it's sort of culminated now with the water district now advocating for a different safe yield number. So at some time in the past, even when they had filed the general adjudication, that could simply have been directed towards having everybody get groundwater allocations based on the technical information in the GSP, and in which case we wouldn't have had much of a conflict. So even when that cross complaint was filed, there wasn't necessarily a clear and direct conflict. Now we're at the point where there is very clearly a clear and direct conflict. We even have probably a legal dispute about whether or not the judge is the appropriate forum to try the safe yield issue. And I've talked to your attorneys about this. So I just want to say that, and Tim, I want to say that on the legal side, the attorneys are very aware that this is a family feud and that we're still going to be family afterwards. And so while the legal issues have gotten very intense and the conflict has become very direct, we're trying to figure out a way to resolve those issues in an expeditious manner, in a way that will allow us to get back to doing our normal business the way we've been doing it.
Okay. And I would just like to make a comment, just to clarify. Mr. Lemieux, you made a statement that we were urging the court and then also advocating for the court to change. We would not be, and we're not urging, we are taking science and data to prove a number. We're not trying to convince anybody or come up with any type of false information. So we're not urging or advocating for something that's not there if we did not have the science to back it up. We want to make sure what's best for the basin. So I want to make sure it's clarified that we're not urging or doing something like that. We are using proven science to make a case.
I didn't use the term false.
No.
And I didn't attribute your information as false in my statements.
Okay.
You're the one who threw false in there regarding your statement. What I'm responding to now is the recent declaration that was filed in connection with the class motion. That declaration tells the court that the water district, along with its partners, Mojave Pistachios and the others, have hired an expert and made a determination that the safe yield of the basin is different and greater than what's in the GSP. And obviously the Groundwater Authority has to defend its work. And so that puts, my point being that puts us in a very direct and obvious conflict of interest in that case.
Okay. And then my question for you would be, is if you could look at the data, why would you want to defend the work if it's true? Because we want to do what's best for this community, not just defend it because, oh, we're going to defend it. Let's do what's best for the community, and that's what I ask.
So I think some of the board member comments I heard earlier were that we're acknowledging that we're in the process of doing a review of the GSP, which would include looking at all of the data. And I think I heard a promise and a commitment, really, from the GA that if that data is supplied to the GA in the context of revising the GSP, that will figure one way or the other in the revision of the GSP. And so, it will be looked at, vetted, just like all the other data, discussed presumably at the TAC level, just like it was last time when we did this. And so I think if you supply the data, you can expect that data will be taken into consideration and accounted for by the technical experts when they're preparing the revisions to the GSP. If you don't supply the data, if it's withheld to gain tactical advantage in the litigation, then we've got another problem.
Go ahead, sir.
Chairman, if I may, there's a couple things going on here. One, yes, the litigation creates a problem, but there's another sort of general problem with this board having a chair and a vice chair that need to be able to make decisions at times between board meetings. They're limited, but they're between board meetings, and sometimes the water district has been in complete conflict with the policies that this board has adopted. As for example, in the legislations, that we recently got passed. I think everybody's aware that the Water District's idea of that legislation is completely different than the policy position of this board. And having them at a chair or vice chair creates a problem for us moving forward in that, which is why Stan was not moved into a vice chair position initially. The litigation was filed, it was an issue. At that point in time, the Water District told us they were not challenging things they now are clearly challenging in the adjudication. For example, they're seeking de novo review of your GSP, which means it's as though your GSP does not exist in the adjudication. And so that's a problem because your board in their world doesn't exist. They just have their litigation. The next part of this is I'd like to point out that if this groundwater authority is a public agency that can base everybody in this basin is this groundwater authority's constituents. How do we have a groundwater authority that is supposed to regulate groundwater with a chair or vice chair that is suing everybody in the basin over groundwater rights and refusing to provide the data? We've just heard from the Water District's manager, general manager, they've worked with outside parties. They've a limited group of outside parties, large pumpers only, 3 in particular. They've put together a data packet to use in the litigation to get advantage over others, and they are not going to share that data. I don't know how you could be the chairman of a groundwater authority whose job it is to manage groundwater and withhold data at that time. I forget what this board would like to do. I don't even know what DWR would do with that situation. So it's something to keep in mind.
I'd like to comment back to Mr. Hall if I could. It's very easy to be a chair or a vice chair because you do what your board made a decision and that's what you do. You follow the direction of the board, but your opinion can be different than the rest of the board. But the Water District is not trying to not work with anybody. The Water District is working with every pumper in this basin. We are interested in every pumper of this basin and to protect the rights of every pumper in this basin. So as I stated before, we have a duty as elected people to represent the people in this valley. So far, our ratepayers have paid over $13 million in fees to the replenishment fee, and nothing has been done as bringing any water into this valley. I have a bottle of water in my hand. If I went and dumped it on the ground, that cost me less than $1. That's more water that's been brought into this valley by the ratepayers that have paid $13 million to date. So I want to do what's right for my ratepayers. And so everything that we can look at, we need to look at. And that's all I'm asking for. And as far as this goes, why could I not be a vice chair or a chair? If 4 members of this board vote to support 779, which you're right, I did object to that, but I still have to say I agreed to it. An article came out in the paper about that, as you brought up. They made a decision, they put an article out. Did I agree with the article? No. But that's what this board voted to do. So to say because somebody has a different opinion, they can't run a meeting or be a vice chair, I disagree with you.
Director Griffin, if I may, wouldn't it be a really difficult position for you to be chair of the GA, signing a letter in opposition to legislation that the GA has voted to support?
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Hall. It would be hard.
So how could you?
But that's
so how
what
could
do.
you? Wait, let me
that's what you
finish.
have to do because you're elected.
Well,
If the board makes a decision, you move forward with what the board decides.
So let's apply this to last year. The Water District signed a letter in opposition to 779.
Correct.
The GA signed letters in support of 779.
Correct.
How do we have a GA supporting something while the chair is against it?
Because the other 4 board members voted to say that they wanted to support it.
Okay.
It's what you do.
Okay.
That's why you have a board, for difference of opinions.
Okay.
Just because your chair isn't saying exactly what the majority want to do does not make that person a good chair or that organization a good chair.
I'd like to make a quick comment. So we're not discussing opinion on this. Director Vallejo and Council Lemieux we're very direct, and this is a legal conflict created by the Water District, not an opinion. You would like to operate it on an opinion basis, but we don't operate it on an opinion basis. We operate it by legal constraints. And so stick to the topic.
And I think I want to point out again, look, the legislation is sort of a operational issue, and I think it demonstrates the point, but how do we, as this GA, whose responsibility is to regulate the groundwater in this basin, go through a 5-year GSP update when the chair of the GA is not providing data that they want to use in a courtroom for de novo review of the GSP? I don't know how you can possibly have a public agency that has a chair whose job it is to review data, come to a conclusion of what the basin's parameters are, now update that after 5 years. And let's remember, the Water District voted for the initial GSP. They were a deciding vote. I don't know how we then have them as the chair at a point in time when we're supposed to have a public process to review that, and they are withholding data to gain advantage in litigation. I just don't know how you can possibly have a public agency that would have that. I think DWR would, I think DWR's comments on the GSP update at that point would be, I don't even know. They would be so, it's just kind of an anthem to being a public agency that's supposed to regulate groundwater if you are the chair and you're withholding the information. I don't even know how that possibly functions. If you have a duty, you even have a duty as a groundwater pumper to bring that information forward. What you're trying to do in the adjudication, and you've made it clear in your comments on the legislation and others, is you're seeking de novo review. You would prefer this GA to not exist so that your data is only looked at by a judge in Orange County, not the public during the public process that Sigma developed to develop groundwater sustainability plans. This is supposed to be a local problem, a local plan developed by the locals. We developed a technical advisory commission to go over the data to get to where we are. And now we want to have a secret TAC, which includes those that didn't agree with the original GSP, to do this and have their own. And by the way, while we're talking about the original GSP, I think it's lost on people in this basin. Who did the water modeling? Desert Research Institute.
Mr. Hall, I feel like we're getting a little far afield on this particular topic.
Well, let me finish here. I want to finish to say that the Desert Research Institute's the one who did it. That is effectively the University of Nevada. They have nothing to gain in this. So if you in fact have data, you need to bring it forward so we can have it in the GSP. And I don't know how you can sit as a chair of the board while you're not bringing that data forward.
Okay. And while you're making your comments, I'll make mine back that it's a two-way street. And that is the issue with this board. The Water District does not get all of the information from the Groundwater Authority because of litigation, which is the same thing that you're using against the Water District right now to say that we can't provide. So we're not provided with full information. I don't attend closed session on any items except for the very first one. So we don't get a full picture either. So it's very convoluted the way this whole thing is working. And so I anticipate a day when all this will be settled and we can all work together. And that's what I hope for. But you're bringing up old reports, which there was no new science done. There was no new science when the groundwater GSP was built. It was all one report, which was the Todd report, which compiled data from old reports. So it wasn't new science. That was all stuff that was compiled down. And so we have done new work, and so let's bring that forward and let's put it out. And we want to work with the Groundwater Authority. I've said it numerous times that as a board, we are not trying to say the GA does not exist or we don't want to work with the GA. We are saying let's look at the numbers and let's see if this is the true number coming in.
Okay, Dr. Griffin, I think we need to probably pull back and let's stay back on the topic of what this agenda item is. And
I would agree.
Again, It's a legal issue created by the Water District, and the reason we're here today is because of that, and that's what the action
Mr.
is
Chair,
about.
if there's not any other public comment, I'm ready to make a motion.
I haven't, I do need to bring it to public comment before you do it, but
Motion and second in the discussion, and we can go to public comment.
afterwards.
Yeah, so I'll make a second. We can still take public comment.
Okay. We do have any other public comment from the floor?
I just wanted to clarify the motion. Is that to change, to amend the resolution, that this will continue, or keep it on an annual basis?
My motion is to make it a continuing, yes, the motion I made was to change the last section to not just apply to this calendar year, but to apply unless and until this board makes a determination that the conflict no longer exists. And at that point, the regular rotation would be reinstated as it otherwise would have been without the conflict.
It would be helpful in the absence of having, either it would be helpful for you to work through the edits so that we understand specifically what you're asking for, or alternatively, we could bring it back.
I think it's pretty straightforward there.
Okay.
So, section 6, effective until the board determines a conflict no longer exists, that the representative of the Indian Wells Valley, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so
So it's just that one change?
Just that one change.
Okay.
January 1st, 2024. It's just effective until.
Did you get that, April?
Changing the effectiveness of the resolution until the board determines that there's no longer a conflict.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Chairman Hayman?
Well, we're done with conversation with the board, and
Yep.
I will now go with public comment from the floor. Seeing no public comment from the floor, we do have a public comment online. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee Westelusk. I agree with the motion, and the Water District, from my recollection, had advised a conflict of interest, and that the member at that time could not attend all the votes or meetings. I remember there was a conflict of whether they could vote on certain things. So I agree with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Any other callers on the phones? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion and a second, so it's back to you, April.
Chairman Hayman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters?
Aye.
Director Itnire?
No.
Director Griffin?
No.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 10, contract renewal with regional government services or for the comprehensive administrative services, and this will be with Carol.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your packet, you have a staff report and the proposed contract for the last several years. The Groundwater Authority has contracted with regional government services for your comprehensive administrative services. We provide the general manager, myself, your clerk of the board, April, and also the accounting and finance staff. The current agreement will expire at the end of this month, and RGS has provided a proposed contract to continue providing services for another year. Just for a little background, in terms of the scope and the pricing, basically the scope that we're proposing is very similar to the scope for the current year. I think the difference is we've added a little bit more in support for the communications and engagement plan activities, which we've actually started this year, mid-year, and we're proposing to continue some of that. I think there's, you'll also see that in the contract and the rate schedule, there's a bit of a rate increase adjustment for April and for myself, just because RGS needs to do that. But in terms of what we're proposing for your budget, you'll see Again, it's not a not to exceed, it's just a number, and that's what we've done here for the past several years. And we've also been very good about staying under our proposed budget. So this year, for example, we had proposed 333,000. We'll actually expect to come in under that, maybe around 315 or so. So the proposed budget for 2024 is 340. And again, we would not expect to exceed that, and we work to keep our budget very tight. So the proposed contract is in the packet. Council has reviewed it and approved us to form, so happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we hope you'll consider approving it for another year.
Thank you, Carol. Bring it back to the board for any questions or comments they may have.
Question, was there a reason why we only did this in one-year increments? I mean, I recall there's a cancellation clause in the contract if something truly went wrong with the relationship, and it seems unusual to me to have our general manager on a year-to-year contract as opposed to just a contract that has a not to exceed every fiscal year. And if something were needed to change, we could invoke a cancellation clause. So similar to my last comments on the last item, in assuming that RGS was willing, I don't see why we would continue to have to go through this every year as long as the relationship was working out and we had the ability to, you know, in some sort of timely manner, you know, cancel the contract if we needed to.
I would like to say I agree with you on that. I think that it would, if we all chose today to vote no, then they're unemployed immediately, and I think that would be rough on any company. So if, I would like to see it changed where we did it every 2 years, and then also an extended date, like into April or something, or March, where they had a timeline. If you canceled them in December, they weren't just without a job immediately, so.
And I'm looking here, I see that we have a 30-day cancellation clause with or without cause. So in my mind, I don't see a need to just make it a one-year contract because we have the ability to remove ourselves from the contract if we so needed to for some reason that doesn't exist today. Just a thought. I'm happy to, you know, move forward with this contract as it is, but just in terms of efficiency and those issues, it seems like something we could extend for much longer than just one-year increments.
I appreciate your streamlining approach, Director Vallejo, and I agree. Is it possible that we could do this with a short change to that date and just go from there again?
Let's see, 3.1. Yeah, it says the agreement shall commence on January, so I'm looking at section 4.1 of the agreement, page 4 of 13. Shall commence on January 1st, 2024, and shall continue for 1 year after the effective date unless terminated earlier, kind of thing. So if we want to put a set number of years in there, that's fine. It just seems seems a little small. Obviously, we'd have to get RGS to agree on their end. I don't think they'll have my gut tells me there's not going to be an objection from them on their end. And then the only other question I want to make sure is there a not to exceed limit in here? Because that would be, I think, an important provision if it is longer than 1 year. We want to make sure we're keeping it within some set budget because the 1 year term otherwise does that for us. So that would be the only, the two things on my mind about this contract that could change.
So how would that work for you, Carol, as far as it would set the same hourly rate, or would you want to see some type of inflation for cost of living, or?
I guess I would have to bring that back to our executive director. Basically, they tell us when they need to adjust the rate schedule based on the cost of benefits. RGS is a public agency, so it's not for profit. So basically, they're just passing along actual costs. So I would just have to defer to our management there.
So would you rather us take action today, or would you?
I guess we would need to take action today because the contract does expire at the end of the month. But I would be happy to propose a multi-year arrangement, maybe going forward?
Yeah, because there is this detail that apparently would need some conversation, that does make sense. I'm happy with, assuming nothing changes our mind from public comment, moving forward with this contract, and then the next time it comes up, maybe we structure it.
Make the appropriate change.
Yeah.
We have a full year to
Yeah.
get it right, so.
But I definitely appreciate your consideration of that.
Sure.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none. Any public comment from the floor? Any public comment on the phones? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itnyer,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 11, Amendment 7 to Agreement with Capital Corps Group for the 2023 budget adjustment and 2024 scope of work. This will be with Carol and Michael McKinney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, we have Jeff Simonetti here. I didn't realize you were going to be here in person. Nice to see you, Jeff. So we have actually two parts to this action today. The contract, the annual contract with Capital Corps Group is expiring end of this month, and we're looking to renew their contract for work in 2024. They've proposed a work plan, a scope of work, and you actually had a chance to review that last month, I believe, and approve that. But now we have the actual contract with the scope of work and the budget attached to it for your consideration. And the budget for that is I'm looking for it, but I believe it's $204,950. And it's a bit of an increase over the 2023 budget, but we've seen that there's definitely an uptick in the activities that they're working on for us, some very important measures that they're working on, not only some state legislative matters that have become very important over the past year, but also working on the very critical matter of our funding for our pipeline project. So we have the proposed scope of work and budget in their contract renewal. And then we also want to do the housekeeping of a budget adjustment for their 2023 budget, which was approved with a not-to-exceed amount. And because there were some items that came up, and primarily, I think, associated with the state legislative activities that really created a lot of effort on their part, created an exceedance of the approved budget. And so we are looking for, and I believe that was they're looking for an increase of $22,000 over the approved amount of $174,000. And we anticipate that will cover the charges for this year. So the two actions that are associated with this item are the approval of the 2024 scope of work and budget, which is in the Amendment 7, as well as the budget adjustment for 2023 of $22,000. And then Jeff or Michael, by all means, if you'd like to speak to that, please do.
Carol, I am here. I apologize for not being there in person, members of the board and public. I am actually home ill with a sinus infection, as you can probably hear. So I didn't think it was good to show up in person. Yes, Carol has put that very well, and I am happy to answer questions. We do anticipate a lot of work in 2024, specifically regarding the Water Resources Development Act, but also regarding ongoing negotiations for water and associated agreements for the conveyance of that water, as well as the storage and the transfer and interconnection for that water. So those are the main things that are driving our request for an increase in 2024. As Carol appropriately stated, we did not anticipate some of the legislative actions that did take place in 2023, which has created a request for an increase, but I'm happy to answer specific questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Michael. We'll bring it back to the board for any questions or comments you may have.
I'll make a comment.
ahead, Director.
I just wanted, oh, there we go. I just wanted to say I appreciate the work the Capital Corps has done. I've got a chance to work with them on several issues from, working on finding water supplies, from working to securing funding for pipeline for our community, the work that they've done on making sure that small pumpers in the basin are represented, working on a variety of issues. I thought they've done a tremendous job so far, and I'm happy to support the resolution.
Thank you, Director Peters. Any other comments from the board?
Just a question, and sorry, I might have just missed it. The 2023 budget adjustment is retroactive?
It's to cover basically just the end of this year. So
So it hasn't happened yet, that work?
the charges are beginning to exceed the budget.
Right.
So we need to approve an adjustment so that we can allow their charges to continue through the end of the year.
To directly answer Director Vallejo's question, the invoice which you just approved has brought us $3,831 over the budget. We do anticipate a heavy December based upon federal legislative work as well as some state legislative work, which will, I'm sure, end by the end of next week. We do not anticipate using all of the 22,000. We put in a number just in case. Is kind of how it works.
Thanks for that.
Since we are on a not to exceed.
Thank you for that. Yes, so I think it's really important in general for every agency to make sure we're actively staying ahead of these budget limits and for, really forecasting what the expenditures coming up will be. And it's on both ends. It's on, I believe, the contractors' end and on the agency's end, working together to make sure these contracts are managed as the contract terms outline. I think it's important to try to catch this before we go over budget next time. Again, this is not only for us, but also for Capital Corps as well. So I would not want to see a big retroactive adjustment being made. I'm glad this is not a big retroactive adjustment, and it's mostly looking forward. There is some retroactivity here, which is always concerning, but not necessarily unusual, unfortunately. So I'm okay with moving forward on this, but I do want to avoid retroactive budget increases to the extent possible moving forward.
I will, and I apologize. I'll take responsibility for that. Michael has been talking with us about his concerns about the exceedance for several months now. And I had suggested that we just bring it to the board in December, but in future, if it ever happens again, we'll be sure to bring it to you before the exceedance.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make a quick comment. I too, I think Capital Corps does a great job, and I appreciate the work that you guys do. Whether or not I support everything 100%, I think you guys do a great job. Do we need to address the back work as a change order, or is it okay to do it all as one item?
I don't think that there's change orders under the contract, correct?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
We're a not to exceed amount, and to advise you guys before we do exceed an amount, which we did do under the contract requirements. So it's actually not a change order. You're modifying amendment number 6 to our contract, which had the not to exceed amount in it.
Okay.
And the work was generally within the scope of work, but underestimated just because these were unforeseen items that arose mid-year.
Okay.
Couldn't have known that they would happen.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, any public comment from the floor? Seeing none, we do have public comment on the line. Caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee West-Lusk. I want to thank Capital Corps for all their work, and I agree with renewing the budget for 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Any other callers on the phone? Seeing none? Okay, before we bring back board, I just want to reiterate too that Capital Corps has been a tremendous asset to our successes, and I want to thank them for all their hard work, and we'll bring back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 12, review and consideration of the 2023 budget amendments. This will
Okay.
be with Carol and Gina from RGS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one more item for you here administratively. We're bringing to you a proposed budget amendment for calendar year 2023, and staff likes to do this just to make sure that we have a nice, clean budget, that the changes that occurred throughout the year, the overages, the less spends than anticipated are essentially ratified by the board. And we have a budget at the end of the year that basically conforms to what our actual revenue and expenditures are. And there's a staff report in the packet that gives you some highlights and summaries, and then there's also a spreadsheet that gives you the budget estimate and proposed budget amendments. And if you look at the spreadsheet, it makes it a lot easier to see what they are, because there's the original as the number columns. You'll see the original budget, the proposed budget amendment amount, and then what the proposed adjusted budget looks like. And if Gina is on the line, I'll ask her to walk through some of it, because she has painstakingly gone through all of these items to propose these adjustments. And so, Gina, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very good.
Great. Good afternoon. And yes, what I have done is set up a mini forecast. We have the majority of the invoices for the fiscal year. There's still a few November and December's invoices still outstanding, but I projected those and came up with what we anticipate being a year-end estimate. There will be accruals that will occur as a result of invoices coming in late or revenue coming in late, and we will back that in. So these aren't final figures in terms of a year-end estimate, but it is our proposed budget amendment for the current fiscal year. And during the year, the board does approve invoices and actions in staff reports. And as well as the general manager has the purchasing authority to approve expenditures less than $50,000. And with that, sometimes those expenditures occur in the middle of the month. And what I've basically done to make it easy, but we can adjust it for next year, is to recognize all of those budget amendments or adjustments during the year in one package in December at the end of our calendar year. And so in summary, as a result of those adjustments, we're looking at a revenue amendment of $1.1 million, which includes a increase in the estimated revenue for the DWR grant of $1.6 million, as well as a revenue decrease through various adjustments to the Indian Wells Valley Water District augmentation schedule, which was a decrease of $790,000. Again, that could also change as a result of actual adjustments. And moving to expenses, we have an adjustment of $2.1 million, which again, the majority of that is the DWR adjustment. We're spending rather quickly there on the IP grant. And we also have some increases in just basic stats and overall engineering costs related to the imported water items and other expenditures during the year. We have included the capital core increase for the current fiscal year of 22,000. So that's been actually adjusted here. And we've made some minor adjustments to our legal costs. And that's an overall summary of the changes during the year. And I'm available for any questions if you have any additional questions regarding the details.
Thank you, Gina. We'll bring it back to the board for any comments. Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it to the public for public comment. Any public comment from the floor? Any public comment on the phones? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itnire,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 13, Resolution 09-23, General Manager Authorization to Execute Bureau of Land Management Permitting Documents. This will be with Steve Johnson and Helena.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman Hayman. This is Steve here. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody again. This is in relation to the pipeline project that's moving very rapidly with Provost and Pritchard doing design and the environmental, and we've got right-of-way folks working too. As part of the right-of-way folks and some of the work that needs to be done, pre-design work needs to be done. We're working in some areas, we'll be working on BLM land and requires BLM permitting. BLM requires authorization from the board to allow the general manager to sign these permit requests. So Helena, I think Helena is new to you, but Helena is going to do just a brief report for you and make a recommendation.
Hi, good afternoon. So this staff report is to present Resolution 09-23, which would authorize general manager to execute BLM permitting documents on behalf of the GA. So for a bit of background, GA was granted a right-of-way by BLM to construct a couple of groundwater monitoring wells. However, the attempt to drill the second well failed as the fracture zone was not suitable for drilling. And so the BLM is requiring GA to submit a new application to drill the well at an alternative site. And in order for the general manager to sign permitting documents on behalf of the GA, BLM is requiring a document authorizing the general manager to do so. Additionally, the GA has an agreement with BLM to allow BLM to provide permits for the imported water project activities for the portion of the project's alignment that is on BLM land. And as the imported water project is currently ongoing, BLM will require the GA to sign additional permitting documents as the project progresses. So staff is proposing this resolution to eliminate the need for future board actions on this routine matter and streamline obtaining permits for the GA's projects. Staff recommends the board review and consider the adoption of Resolution 09-23, authorizing the general manager to sign BLM permitting documents on behalf of the GA. And I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. We just had a loud noise echo through the building. But
What an earthquake, that's what I thought.
No.
First, so we're good.
No, it was a
sonic
sound barrier or test.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, so
April.
we will bring it back to the board for any questions or comments that they may have.
I think it's important that the general manager has the authority to issue, to get permits and do this stuff. I just want to make sure, it looks like to me we're calling out for specific projects. So do we need to have it that detailed, or could it be vague? Because there are some things that I do support, some I don't, but I do support the general manager being able to walk into BLM or meet with BLM to get a permit.
Yeah, I would echo Director Griffin's comments on that. I think that that's pretty routine and non-controversial. I don't see a problem with the general manager having that authority.
Okay, hearing no further comments from the board, we'll bring it to the public. Any public comment on the floor? Seeing none, any public comment on the phones? There are none. We'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itnire,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 14, Stetson staff rate adjustment. This will be with Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that interfered with, I used a hotspot for my computer, and it seems to have knocked it around a little bit in terms of my reception, but I think it's back now. So thank you very much. You have in your packet staff report for this item. As you all know, Stetson Engineers serves as a water resources manager for the Groundwater Authority, and they've done so since 2017. There is the original agreement included a rate schedule, and there's no specific provisions in the agreement to adjust that schedule on any periodic basis. They had used their original 2017 rates through actually September of 2021, at which time this board agreed to use Stetson's 2019 rate schedule. So they've still been billing several years in arrears on their 2019, and so they've asked if the board would authorize them to allow an upgrade to their 2022 rate schedule. And that is in your packet. You'll see the comparison that they provided. So the question for the board is for you to consider approval of an amendment to the Water Resources Managers Services Agreement, incorporating their updated rate schedule for 2022 rates.
Does that conclude your report, Carol?
That does. Thank you.
We'll bring it back to the board for any questions or comments.
I only wanted to comment that it does not look outlandish at all. I mean, they're very small percentages, especially for the time frame. I mean, they're still 2 years back, and these are 3%. That doesn't even cover cost of living. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no further comments from the board, any public comment from the floor? We do have public comment on the phone, so caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee Westolusk. I just want to know, how do they come up with these hourly rates?
I think that would be a question for Stetson. I cannot answer that.
Yeah, I can answer that briefly. And it's not a direct answer. A long time ago, there was a formula developed to come up with rates for individual staff that's based on employee salary. It's a salary plus a multiplier for overhead cost over the amount of hours that they would work for the year. There's a formula for that. So we use that as a base, and it's directly related to the individual staff person's annual salary, converted down to an hourly rate with overhead. We also regularly look at other rates of other firms. We've always tried since I've been here 46 years, but since I've been here, Tom Stetson before me, we'll always try to keep rates to the lower side of other engineering firms of our size and certainly larger firms. So there is a formula behind it, and then there's adjustments that are made. We try not to, with our, just as some background, with our more permanent, regular clients that we're doing work for, like Water Masters and the Groundwater Authority, we try to hold rates for multiple years without any increase because typically they have revenue issues and trying to generate income. We typically try to keep it for a few years before we do a rate increase. We hold it, even though we do adjust our rate schedule for our employees every year. For new contracts, it applies. But for the regular contracts, we tend to wait 2-3 years. This would be effective January 1, 2024, and I would imagine it'll go for a couple of years, between 24 and probably 25. That's the way it would work.
Okay, thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Could I add to that real quick?
Thank you, Renee. Yes, Director Griffin, go ahead.
Also, Renee, you could also go online if you went to the Department of Interior. It's DIR, but it's Department of Industrial Relations, and it'll show you where the rates coincide for. There's some items that Mr. Johnson has that aren't listed in there, but most of the pay scales are there with benefits, and it shows an hourly rate for public works and state employees. So you can see where everything coincides with the rates and verify them that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other public comment on the phones? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Chairman Hayman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Peters,
Aye.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Griffin,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 15, Water Resources Manager Report with Steve Johnson.
Thank you again, Chairman Hayman and the board, and certainly all the stakeholders. There is a written report in the board packet. We've tried to consolidate it down, but there's a lot of information there. I'm not going to go through it all for sure. I did want to mention one thing at the start, and I apologize for this, but I just want to mention something at the start because we are considered the technical arm of the Groundwater Authority as the Water Resources Manager. And the discussion about the release of this new information, I'm not sure what to call it now because we haven't seen anything. But I just got to say, it's for our perspective, it's a bit concerning and discouraging to have it released like this. I mean, anybody can release numbers that say anything. Our door is always open. It always has been open. I know the groundwater, the GA staff's doors are always open. We would have welcomed anybody on that technical working group to include us or let us participate. Most of the folks on that technical working group were a part of our TAC that developed the GSP, certainly developed the sustainable yield, so it's all there. Until we see something that makes any sense, we're not going to give it much concern until we see something that actually makes sense and it actually has some science to it. Because I'm not trying to create more discussion, but calling something new science when there's nothing there to support it, I don't think it's appropriate, in my opinion, as your water resource manager. So with that, and I don't want to create a whole bunch of a discussion. We've already been there. For the report, I mentioned it's written. I want to start with the grants. We did just receive a little over $100,000. I just heard that from April today from DWR, so that's good. We've still got on Prop 1 and 68, we've still got $30,000 out there that is approved. We're waiting for checks. We've also got the closeout, which is the retention money, which amounts to right around $220,000. That is under review. We believe DWR is going to they've approved all the invoices. This is just the retention, so we should be getting that at any time. Under the implementation grant for the pipeline project, we've got a lot of money, $2.3 million waiting for approval. And we've gone back and forth with DWR, not with any changes, really just coordination on getting the invoice processed. I will let you know, because I get personally a little concerned when, when on a grant situation and we're not getting invoices processed in a reasonably rapid manner, that there may be an issue. I will let you know so that the board is aware, and certainly the public and stakeholders too. They did have a grant manager change at DWR, so there has been, you develop a relationship with a grant manager and how they like to see things, and we've made changes with the old grant manager. So we're dealing with a new grant manager and the way they process invoices and the way they like to see things. So we're having to make those adjustments. So I will say at least part of the delay in getting some of these reimbursements, I think, is legitimate staffing issues at DWR. I will mention that the Urban Community Drought Relief Program grant that we applied for on about a little over $3.3 million. We are still waiting on an answer for that. DWR is reviewing the applications. We expect to hear answers to that. Excuse me. This has already been approved. We are going through grant agreement process. The grant agreement for execution is in DWR's hands, so just waiting for them to approve the final agreement so we can sign it and get moving. So that one is done. The next one is the one I was mentioning, is a 2023 Drinking Water System Infrastructure Resilience and Sustainability Program. That application was made for $2.8 million, and we are expecting to hear back from DWR. Funding awards made in the spring of 2024. So probably 2 or 3 months, we'll find out where we're at on that grant application. For projects, a lot of detail on the pipeline project. The first one is on design. You'll see the detail of what's been going on, what we've been doing. Always at the end of our summary, we provide next steps, which lets you know where we're going. There's a series of next steps that are listed that we're working on to show you where this is going. We've also got the environmental review. Again, a lot of detail on all the work that's been done. And at the end, we provide next steps. And then at the last one is the right-of-way. It's fairly short, but then we provide next steps at the end on the milestones. Basically, a right-of-way acquisition plan, middle of next year is what we're looking at. I will also let you know that you will be seeing, as you recall, and I think all the board members were here when we did this, when we got this grant, the grant that we received, which is substantial, it was a big grant, $7 million. And then we went out for proposals, or requests for proposals and contracts for design, environmental, and right-of-way. The total amount of our contracts exceeded at the start of this, the grant amount. We've also had some change orders, some amendments, which we have discussed before. Some of them not necessarily expected, but the situation we've had to deal with because we're going so fast with not a lot of information. But we've prepared internally, and we're going to review that with the GA staff first. A summary of the grant amount, a summary of our work task and budgets, summary of cost to date, our projected expenditures going forward, and some recommendations that we'll be making to the GA staff, ultimately coming to the board on how we either stay within our budget that we have to cut some of the work back, some of the work tasks. All of this work is being authorized by the Groundwater Authority to the consultants on a task order basis. So if we need to cut back on some task order authorizations, we'll do that. Or if we need to find other sources of money, we'll do that. We are working with Capital Corps to try to fill that gap on funding. But that summary will be coming to the GA staff and to the board probably by the January board meeting. So moving on, we've got U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as you all know, we've reported that we're working with the Corps to help supplement our work. The whole goal here was to have the Corps do some of the work on this pipeline project to reduce our cost. It's essentially an in-kind services grant to the Groundwater Authority. We're still working with them on tasks that are appropriate for them. I'll just let you know, and this is good for the Groundwater Authority, bad for in-kind services, but frankly, with the way this grant was structured for the implementation for design, environmental, and right-of-way, with the timelines we are moving, our consultants are moving so fast that there's not really time for the Corps of Engineers to gear up, identify a project for them to participate in and actually provide in-kind services. So we're looking ahead, trying to find some work for them to do. They have a list of tasks, so it's in their hands. We're waiting to hear back from them on some tasks we've identified moving forward, because we're essentially going too fast right now for the Corps to participate in what we're doing right now. Moving forward, there is a section that we provided on the shallow well mitigation program. We've created a summary format, a summary table for all the applications received and what the current status is. So that's there for your review. GSP update is underway. There's some discussion here about the GSP and updating the GSP. I'll let you know that DWR has issued some new guidelines on GSP review and approval of the process, also on annual reports. One of the things they've done is they've changed it from a GSP, it's not an update anymore. It's supposed to be a periodic evaluation. So we're going to rename what we're doing the 2025 GSP periodic evaluation. It's a little different approach than just updating the GSP, but essentially all the same things will be done. All of this the recommended corrective actions will be addressed, and any changes that we're recommending will be included. So that's underway. It's on schedule. The annual report is essentially done. We're on internal review. We thought it'd be done for this meeting to do a walkthrough, but it's on internal review of the annual report. It will be released. The schedule right now is to release it most likely next week. There is a review period that we will set for about 30 days, so it'll be middle toward the end of January for comments on the annual report. But it should be out for your review sometime next week. We normally would send it to the GA staff, to the TAC, most likely to the PAC, and then post it on the website. So that's coming up. Not a lot new on the data collection and monitoring. This is pretty much Gene's area, Gene Moran. We have scheduled the additional monitoring of water levels in the basin that was requested by DWR. We've got another round of that coming up in January. So I'll let you know that was in compliance with the request that DWR made. We'll complete that in January. We are working on the GSP model configuration management plan. That's an update to the DRI model in conjunction with DRI and our modeling group. The model is very close to being updated, completed. We'll be going through some calibration work and then working with the modeling group to identify model runs going forward for the model. So that's moving forward. The Rose Valley, the first monitoring well was completed. We are working now to try and get coordinated with BLM on access permitting to drill the second well. So we have permitting and funding issues for, this is the Navy coastal stuff. We have a second well that we anticipate. We'll likely have to get an extension to our BLM agreement to be able to get this well drilled in time for with the allowed funding. So that's up next. Finally, the data collection that was made regarding the LADWP releases. We've collected data. We put a monitoring network together to try and monitor whatever impacts, whatever any type of water level changes, or to try to track where this water may go. So we have a monitoring network that's in place. Our last round of sampling was in October. We are now reviewing that monitoring well water level data. We're reviewing that data, and a draft report should be prepared in the next probably in January. We'll have a draft report out on what we found with those monitoring wells related to the LADWP releases. More than I wanted to say, but I want to at least get through the important stuff. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Steve. It's all good stuff. Well, we'll bring back to the board for any questions or comments the board may have. Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it to the floor for public comment. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, George Kroll with the Water District. I have been, I made a few requests to staff to do a couple of things. One, I'd like to have discussions with your experts on the various design stages of the imported pipeline project from the Water District perspective. Those meetings have not occurred. Ask the board to encourage their staff to meet with the Water District and talk about how that's going to tie into our system, potentially some of the alternatives to how it might tie into our system in the valley. Additionally, I think it's important, well, not important, I'd certainly like to request that if you would consider allowing me to participate in the rewrite of the groundwater sustainability plan. That's it.
Thank you.
I would just like to point out that the Water District does have a member of the GA that will participate with that review.
So I heard the groundwater sustainability plan is under drafting at this point. I just note that I have pretty extensive regulatory writing background, writing regulations, reviewing regulations on both sides. Certainly would like to be a part of that process in drafting it, looking at it. I probably have more time than our director does, and certainly, you know, with the board's permission, would be happy to be actively involved in that process.
The Water District is invited to, and it has in the past maintained a presence on the TAC, which is where that work is normally done. My understanding is the Water District, on its own initiative, withdrew from the TAC because of the litigation. The GA continues to hold your chair there, waiting for the Water District to come back. So,
okay, so I have discussed that particular aspect of doing this with various members of my board, and I feel I am authorized to say I would like to rejoin the TAC.
you don't need our permission.
Let me know when the next meeting is. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dave.
Dave Janis with the PAC. I've got 3 questions or clarifications on Steve's report from the PAC perspective. The first was on the shallow well mitigation program, which you had when we reviewed this, the board reviewed this at the last meeting, we announced, you announced that your intent was to have the PAC review the recommended changes that you had in work for that document, those 2 documents, and then to potentially have them out for approval at this meeting. We did provide, we had 4 PAC members approved by no comment, and 2 PAC members did provide you additional comments on those 2 documents, and just wondered on what is the schedule now, and if any additional PAC members had comments, would you still be considering them, although we'd passed the deadline?
Yep. This is Steve. Thank you, David, very much. Yes, they were completed, internally reviewed, and ready to go. And then I got another comment from you yesterday or today. I'm not sure what it was. I think
it was another PAC member. That was the second comment.
Yes, we just got it yesterday. I gave it to Myra, who's on the line here. I gave it to Myra, and she has implemented it and sent me a new draft based upon the comment you got yesterday while this meeting is going on. So we would look at having a look to see how she addressed the comment and probably get that out. Gosh, today's Wednesday? If not this week, next week, we'll be having it out.
Okay, and is your intent that we again do individual member review of that? And I would caution, I don't expect to be able to have a quorum for the PAC until mid-January from now through the holidays, obviously. And so that's also going to inform my next two clarifications that I wanted to make. So just with regards to the mechanics of how we get to final board approval for that shallow well mitigation plan.
Yeah, so from my perspective, David, the comments we received obviously were very helpful. These comments were related to implementation of the policy that the board adopted. We are making those changes and we'll use those, the changed implementation process as we go forward. So when we give this document back to you, we're in no rush to get your comments back. We will continue to process these applications based upon the implementation process that we've all put together now.
Yeah, just an additional clarification question. The policy itself is not changing, so it doesn't require board approval. I wondered if, in fact, if the fact sheet and the report document is something that the board will just adopt, or does it have to have a formal vote?
That's a good question. Will we need to have a formal vote on the changes or approval, or do we acknowledge it? Yes.
My understanding, it was not any changes to the policy itself. It's the
Just a
fact sheet
guideline.
that this PAC made two recommendations: a fact sheet and a new well report form, and that's what was provided back to us for review and the comments that have been mentioned today.
Yeah.
I don't recall the board ever approving the fact sheet or the well report form itself.
The fact sheet is meant, I'm sorry, my mic's not turning on. The fact sheet is meant to be a summary of the existing policy, so you're changing the language that's described in the policy.
I don't believe that's, Steve, you would probably have a better opinion on that, but I do not believe it changes anything in the policy. It's the background for well owners in particular that might be eligible for the program.
It's a guideline.
Yeah, it's really, you're right, David. It was really provided by the PAC. It is really clarification, a little more information, a little more guidance. We may have gone in at 25,000 feet for information, and this gets the information that a well owner who's not familiar with wells and how they fail, to bring it down to maybe 10,000 foot level, so that a little more basic understanding of what the well owner needs to be looking at and looking for. So it's really just additional information for the well owner is all it is. No change in policy at all.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, this is intended to be directions to the public on how to present information to the GA?
I think it's both.
Not directions.
No.
It is an information, it's a fact sheet information on things they should consider. And recommended, I can't remember in which document, the recommended data to supply to the GA versus it was required and recommended. I think those are the two breakdowns that I'll defer to any
And I
other PAC
anticipate
member.
the board will use it also as guidelines to look at.
Yeah, it is not a change to the policy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like, from everything I'm hearing, if I understand correctly what the document is, it doesn't sound like anything that would be required to be decided by the GA board. It sounds like something analogous to something like, for example, staff may have generated, I guess, in order to inform the public about the policy or how they might react to the policy.
Exactly, and the purpose of having this somewhat lengthy conversation was the PAC felt there was urgency in getting this clarifying information on how you would and what you would supply and the history on wells and all that. So, and then what required documents and recommended documents are in the report form itself.
I would like to see if we could look at the document and then the board adopt it, because I think we need to use it as a guideline to go by. So it's standard across the board.
If we bring it in as a no action item, but I don't know that we need to do an adoption or any action on it. That way we could all,
Yeah, as long as
Review
we
it.
could all agree that this is what we're
mean-
going to look at, and these are the guidelines
Any
we're
other-
going by. So it's not, oh, well, this one we did this way, and this we're going to go this way.
Well, if I could, it sounds to me like, well, I mean, we've already provided direction to the general manager to work on outreach and engagement plans, and this would be a receive and file from the PAC that would go to the general manager and would inform those plans moving forward.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Second question, Steve and Carol, as general manager, the 5-year update, now known as the 5-year periodic evaluation, and we had thought we would have a first chapter of that for review in the January timeframe. I wanted to confirm, is that still the case, or are we expecting the modifications that the DWR has asked us to do might delay the schedule, or when would it be? And we have some members that have conflicts with their January standing date.
Yeah,
For PAC meeting.
I don't, thank you, David. I don't know of any delays. We should be having material being released in January.
Okay, so at the very least, it'd be available for review, individual review and comment?
Yes.
Okay, and okay, the next question similarly is on the annual report. I didn't catch, you said something about the PAC and TAC and public review of that document. Do you expect to release it for review by the PAC and get the individual comments as well here in the next week or so?
Yes.
Okay, and that was there, and from both Carol and Steve and Carol, is there, obviously the PAC is a policy review board, so that's what you're looking for, is our inputs that are related to policy on the annual report.
Yeah, there's actually not much policy in the annual report. It's mostly data, but we figured the PAC's interested, so.
Well, and we can, policies in the mind of the beholder, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, and we're not expecting comments back by next week. We expected to get it out to, primarily our first run is GA staff, but we also like to give it to the TAC. And typically, if we give it to the TAC, in the past, the PAC has asked to see it too, so.
Okay, thank you for the clarifications.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments from the board?
No, sir.
Any public comments from the floor? Any public comments online? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to item number 16, the general manager's report with Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, the financial statements for the period ending November are in your packet for your review. If you have any questions, please let me know. On the communications and engagement plan update, we are working with our consultant, in-house consultant, on the website improvements. April and I had a chance to meet with him this week to see how it's going, and it's coming along really well. It's going to be great to see some really good improvements and enhancements to the website. But I think what we're actually going to see is a changeover as of the end of this month into January, correct? Because the license on the old one is expiring. So we're going to change over. It will still be a work in progress, or all of the existing data will be transferred over. You'll see a little bit of a different appearance, but we'll be continuing to work on adding the content, changing the organization of it over time. So if you happen to see something that looks different in January because you log on, it's the same website address, but a new platform. So you'll see something different, but it won't be the finished product. We're going to continue to work on it. We just had to change over a little sooner than anticipated because of the expiration date of the former one. But we're excited about how it's going to look. And so over the next several months, we'll be seeing some really good changes to the website. And then finally, we have the Capital Core report for the month. I think they've summarized everything in the report fairly well, but let me just turn it over to Jeff or Michael if they want to add anything.
Good afternoon, members of the board. We had the summary in your packet there. Just wanted to give you 2 quick updates. We had a good trip to Washington, D.C. last week to talk particularly about the Water Resources Development Act and some infrastructure funding, particularly for the interconnection project. And all of those meetings went well and are continuing to move forward. And in terms of upcoming, we will have an update for you probably at the January, if not the February board meeting for what we believe the legislative priorities and some of the bills that we'll be seeing coming out in Sacramento for 2024. So keep an eye on that. But everything went well in Washington, D.C. last week, and our projects are continuing to move forward. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions on the monthly memo if there are any.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll bring back to the board for any questions or for Jeff from Capitol Corps. I want to thank you for all your hard work, and this is not the first trip to Washington that you've made, that's for sure. But I'm anxious to hear back in January, February, and see how we are progressing. But good job on Capitol Corps' part and your effort, and Chairman Peters, Vice Chair Peters, and everyone that's been actively working hard on this. So we appreciate it greatly, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Carol. Any other comments from the board? Any public comments from the floor? We do have public comment on the phones. Caller, go ahead.
Hello, this is Renee West-Lusk. I have a question regarding Task 4 on the second page of the Capitol Corps report. It states, as of the submission of this report, neither the NDAA nor the associated appropriations bills have been approved. Is that still the case? And what are we going to do if NDAA doesn't get passed this year?
The National Defense Authorization Act, just so you are aware, is on the Senate floor as we speak, and hopefully a conference committee report will happen before they adjourn on Friday. So, Renee, keep your hopes up is all I can say.
Yeah. Here's to hoping.
Okay, because I'm getting rather nervous about this.
Yes. We share that feeling.
Okay, so I'm not alone.
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Well, it won't be for lack of effort on Capitol Corps' part. I got to see that back there.
Okay, I see no further public comment on the phones. And with that, our next meeting will be January 10th, 2024, and this meeting is adjourned.